thank you for joining the call. My name's Hayden, or Hayden Stevens. I've got Dylan here on the call as well. I'll introduce everybody in a minute, but I'll just start with us really quickly. So Dylan and I host Teach, Sleep, Repeat. We're invited to this awesome call. I know LBQ have done this for a couple of years. And we had the pleasure being invited to host this session for you. But it's very much been put together by LBQ and the team, which we'll go through in a minute. But yes, we host a podcast called Teach, Sleep, Repeat. Hello, if you've come from that. I know we were posting on our socials, so thank you for joining us if you've come from there. If you haven't checked it out already, you're not already listening, then please do go and check it out at some time after this call. Not right now. That would be a terrible plug, taking you away from this amazing LBQ presentation. So Dylan, I'm going to do a little check to see how your internet is doing.
Hello,
are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Are you answering the question I just asked, or one from 3 minutes ago?
I'm asking one right now, guys. I think we're here. We're ready.
You're back.
Amazing.
What better timing, can I just say, than exactly 4 p.m. after me having 15 minutes of talking absolute nonsense?
Do you reckon it's because so many people joined the call, it's somehow messed up your internet?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to go for that. But Hayden, I'm going to throw it back over to you because you have put together some lovely introductions for these amazing panelists we've got today. So do you want to introduce everyone on the call? And I'll go back to hope my internet stays stable.
I will do indeed. We'll monitor your internet. So yes, aside from myself and Dylan from Teach, Sleep, Repeat, I'd like to welcome our panelists as well from LBQ. So we've got Daryl Keane. Daryl, would you give us a wave? And you're on camera.
Afternoon, everyone.
Hello. So Daryl is Learning by Questions subject and curriculum leader. He's got 10 years experience as a year 5 and 6 teacher and a maths lead. He's worked as an examiner for Pearson, assessing the year 6 national curriculum tests for maths. Daryl makes sure that LBQ's award-winning maths content, I like to get that in there, is constantly updated with the newest curriculum guidance and evidence-led pedagogy. He is the go-to man for that sort of stuff. We've also got Kate on the call. Kate, do you want to give us a wave?
Hello.
Kate Brindle is Learning by Questions subject and curriculum advisor for English. So we've got the maths and the English experts here with 25 years experience in primary across Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. So very experienced. Since 2018, she's collaborated with schools nationwide to develop high quality English curriculum resources. And Kate draws on her extensive classroom practice and curriculum expertise to create engaging, research-informed materials that help teachers deliver confident and effective English teaching. So yeah, 2 awesome people to have on the chat. Thank you for joining us. And of course, we've also, if you've been here a while, Sophie's been chatting away with us. We've got Sophie Bartlett, a good friend of ours, and very well known. I'm sure many of you here for her awesome SATs analysis as well. But she spent over 10 years as a primary school teacher and English lead. Lots of experience teaching year 5 and 6 particularly. She's written for Oxford University Press, TES, and Teachwire, and presented at the Research Ed Conference, and loads of awesome things. And with an audience of over 45,000 people, or educators, I suppose, on social media, she's known for her detailed SATs analysis, something I personally have loved over the years, and also awesome practical classroom resources. Like, I'm just going to pick this up right now, even just your one-page answers. Just godsend resources over the years that have made my life a lot easier. So Sophie, give us a wave. Sorry, I didn't give you a chance to say hello. And
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. And that is everybody.
I think, can you hear me, guys? That's what I want to know right now. Is it all good?
You're all good.
Isn't this amazing? We've got all these amazing people and my internet's okay. Wow. I think we should probably get started. So we've got our top 5 tips to prioritize. We're here, obviously, on behalf of Learning by Questions, an amazing platform. We'll give you all the details about how that works as we go. But what can you take from this? Actionable tips to make SATs prep calmer, clearer, more strategic. So we're going to be using the insights from the incredible data that LBQ can provide you access to through their system to draw comparisons with the past, analyze current trends, and hone in on those weaker areas, where to prioritize. And generally, the main aim of this, to be honest, is that when we finish, we understand that we're not on our own. We're in this together. Lots of other people, hundreds, thousands, in fact, will be in the same boat as you. And when you think, is it just my class who can't do this? The answer is almost certainly no, it's not. And so we're going to go through some ideas on how we can improve it.
Amazing. And being a year 6 teacher myself, we know it's tough, and Sophie, I've been people nod along. I'm sure we've had lots of year 6 teachers in the chat, obviously, and also in this panel as well. But it's tough. I've been there, been a year 6 teacher across multiple schools as well over the years, had lots of ups and downs. Data pressure, we know how it feels. That looming boosters, especially at this time of the year, like you might be thinking about doing that extra prep. Maybe your school doesn't do it. Every school's different. And generally feeling like there's just way too much stuff to do in too little time. I feel like that's a common theme of being in year 6. It can be quite isolating, so it's nice that we're all here. We can actually just chat together. And please do keep using the chat. If you joined early, you can see we're encouraging you to get involved. Chat away to us. We've got a whole LBQ team behind the scenes as well, just checking out the chat. And if there's questions they can help answer with and all that sort of good stuff, they will. But we want to see you interacting with us as well. But yeah, it's easy to forget what else matters in school sometimes, I think, when you're a year 6 teacher, particularly around this time of year. So anyways, we just want to make you feel ready. You can start the new year. It's nearly the end of this term, feeling prepared with a bit of a plan, hit the ground running in January, and hopefully this webinar will alleviate some of those common fears that we have. And you can realize ultimately that you're not alone, and we're kind of in this same old crazy journey together, pretty much. And also, I will say, Dylan, before
what I will say, is people have been asking. Oh,
I'm jumping out. I'm beating you there. Make sure you stick around to the end as well, because I know I just saw someone ask it in the chat. LBQ will be going through what they can offer you as well at the end as well. So we've got some freebies at the end. We're talking about free trials. Please do stick around, because it's amazing what they've got on offer, and we're going to show you that after we've gone through our top tips. Awesome. Right. Sorry, Dylan, over to you.
No. It's exactly what I was going to highlight as well. This will be recorded, so don't worry too much about it. We had someone say in the chat as well already, Sophie, that I think your one-page answers are possibly the most famous thing out there when it comes to SATs prep, because there is nothing more frustrating than having 3 answers on one side of paper and you just want to get through your marking as quickly as possible. So I think we should jump straight in to tip 1, and we're going to be talking about pinpointing your priorities. And Sophie, whilst we're on the ball of talking about your amazing resources that you write and release for people, I want to pass it straight over to you right now. What have we seen in the past? What are the trends? Fill us with your knowledge.
Okay, numbers, my favorite thing. So these slides will be sent out. They're also all this data is available on a few different blogs on LBQ with like way more analysis on it. So if you're interested in that, you can go over there. But we'll start with maths. So we're going to look at the maths papers starting from 2017. So obviously the new curriculum that came out in 2014, the first SATs paper from that was in 2016. Kind of got rid of that analysis because there are a load of anomalies in that. It was a bit of a weird one, like the first paper that came out. So we're starting from 2017. We've analysed these papers across all 3. So obviously in maths, there's the arithmetic and 2 reasoning. So all of these percentages represent all of the questions across the 3 papers. So we have 9 content domains. As you can see, they're represented across the 3 maths papers, going from number and place value and then down to statistics at the bottom. And calculations and FDP, so that's the 4 operations, and fractions, decimals and percentages are consistently the most represented topics. As you can see, fractions, decimals and percentages has in the last few years represented about a quarter of the whole paper, all the paper. And calculations, especially last year, was really high. It dropped a little bit in this year, but it makes sense because that is also a huge part of the curriculum. But it's just worth knowing, because when you do, obviously you kind of probably taught for operations and FDP or a lot of it, but it's really important to keep that on the boil because it represents such a huge amount of the paper. And then if we look at the pass mark, so this year the pass mark was 53%. That was the second highest pass mark that we've seen, alongside 2019 and 2022. So what's really interesting is if we look at what we need to achieve expected standards, so 53% to pass, which when you think about it, is actually only half the answers correct, kind of seems a bit wild, but 53%. You could technically answer just the calculations and the FDP questions correctly to achieve EXS. So you can see in the very bottom right square there, it says 59% of the questions this year, for example, were from calculations and FDP, and you only need 53% to pass. Now, of course, I'm not saying do not teach statistics, algebra, measurement, blah, 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 but it's just worth knowing how weighty those 2 content domains are and how important it really is to focus on them. The other thing this highlights is that if you break down the questions by the year group curriculum they come from, 62% of the paper this year was questions from the years 3, 4 and 5 curriculum, 62%. So you think, God, your job as a year 6 teacher is not only to cover the whole year 6 curriculum in 8 months, it's shorter than everyone else has got for a year's curriculum, but also to plug all the gaps from years 3, 4 and 5, which is something that LBQ is really great for, and you'll kind of see later. But it's obviously not just a year 6 teacher's job. This is really useful to show all the other staff in school is that how much of year 3, 4, 5 content is tested on. And again, technically, you could not teach any year 6 content and you could still pass a SATs paper not knowing any year 6 content.
Is that your advice as well?
Yeah, I was about, if you let me breathe, Hayden, I was about to say, do not do that, obviously.
Yeah, okay.
It just shows how important all the foundations of these maths are. when I used to do SATs papers kind of near the beginning of the year, whether you agree with that or not, I would write down all the questions from the year 6 curriculum and say, just try not to attempt those because you haven't been taught it, and just see how well you do on the years 3, 4 and 5 questions. And it was obviously more helpful for the kids because they didn't get stressed out. But it's really eye-opening to see where they're falling down on. And I think Daryl's going to talk us through that later, some of the more common gaps from lower down in the Key Stage 2 curriculum. So this is useful because it's, I very highly doubt that those kind of ratios are going to drop. So focus on your calculations and your FTP daily if possible, and just make sure that you're really secure, you're plugging the gaps in the year 3, 4 and 5 content. So if we look at grammar next, grammar is almost as satisfying to analyze as maths. Reading not so much, but we'll get onto that in a minute. So in grammar you have 7 content domains, G1 to G7, and you can see what they refer to at the side here. So similar with maths, there were 2 content domains that are the most represented. In grammar it's the same, so G1 and G5. G5 being punctuation, and G1 being grammatical terms or word classes. So G1 represents consistently about a quarter and G5 about a third. So this is just looking at the grammar and punctuation paper, not the spelling paper, because obviously they combine to make the whole thing, the whole test. But I'm just looking at the grammar and punctuation one here. So they've consistently been the most common since 2017. And again, a similar pattern. So if we look at the pass mark, this grid in the bottom left-hand corner here, the pass mark has again basically been about half the last few years, 50 or 51%. And again, in theory, possible to pass the grammar paper on just those 2 content domains, which does make sense because they are the most heavily represented in the curriculum. So obviously grammatical terms and word classes, there are a lot of those. There's a lot to do with punctuation. But the others are not underrepresented. They're just quite small areas. So again, really important to keep those content domains on the boil. It's interesting, actually, if you break it down by strand and look at the most common strands that appear. So the top 4 most common strands that have appeared are these 4 here. So starting with punctuation for parenthesis, that's been represented 17 times since 2017. So your commas, your brackets and your dashes. Obviously, there's loads of valuable opportunities to teach that through writing rather than just discretely. But when you do discrete grammar, maybe chuck a few more of those in. And then the next most popular, synonyms and antonyms, which we know children quite often get confused between. And then apostrophes, bane of our life, bane of everyone's life, I can imagine. And verbs, interestingly, come up. So again, that this will be, you don't have to note these down, but it's good to be aware of. These will be in the slides and they're also on the blog, things that you can just constantly throw at your children, because no doubt they'll come up again next year quite a bit. Right, if we move on to reading is a little bit harder to analyse. It's not so black and white. So there are 8 content domains when it comes to reading, from 2A to 2H. And you're probably aware of this already, that 2B and 2D are the most commonly represented. 2D being inference, representing last year, or this year anyway, almost half of the paper, which is a lot. And then retrieval closely following behind with about a third of the paper. The proportion of retrieval questions dropped a bit this year, actually, and inference is the highest that we've seen it. It is a bit trickier in reading because, unlike maths and grammar, you can't just say, right, well, teach more fractions, teach more calculations. You can't just go teach more retrieval, because you might be able to retrieve from one text, but you might not be able to retrieve very well from another text. Obviously, we can look at different ways of doing retrievals, like skimming and scanning, looking for capital letters if they're asking for a place or a name. But rather than going like, let's just do this lesson on retrieval, or let's just do this lesson on inference, it's not so kind of clear cut with reading. But it's just good to be mindful of what comes up a lot. So with inference, there's often a lot of what might the author mean by this, and all those kind of tricky ones that are hard to explicitly teach. Really, there's a lot of practice, a lot of exposure to sentence stems. If we break down the reading a little bit more, we can look at the types of extracts that have been across the papers. So if you've been in year 6 a while, you will know that poetry has not appeared for a long, long time.
Is it coming next year, Sophie? That's what everyone needs to know. Will it appear next year?
I get my crystal ball. I'm going to say no this time. No poetry. Because every single time I've said yes, it's not come up. So maybe if I say no, it will.
This is the one.
You can see, so the colours here, so blue is poetry, green is non-fiction, and yellow is fiction. So every year, apart from 2018, we've had 2 fiction extracts and 1 non-fiction extract. And the third extract in a reading paper is the most challenging, and kind of generally say if you're aiming for expected standards, you want to be achieving really well on extracts 1 and 2. And if you're aiming for greater depth, you need to be achieving well on all 3 of them. So that third extract has always been a fiction one. Who knows, could be a poetry next year. A lot of it, though, is to do with the constraints of the word count. So obviously a poem, you're not going to have many words in a poem. So when you do have a poem, you need one of the other texts to be a lot longer, which I think is kind of where it falls down a little bit. And there's always been 2 3-mark questions in a SATs paper. The framework actually says you can have up to 4, but since 2017, we've not seen more than 2 3-mark questions. Not that you can do a lot with that really, but it's just worth, it's helpful to know, because the 3-mark questions are often where children fall down. So it's quite nice to know that there's not 12 marks necessarily at risk here. They're possibly only 6.
Do you think there's anything to be said for that obviously we talked about with reading being a little bit different to the other 2 subjects? You would say with maths and GPS, you can kind of focus on those areas. It's like, well, this comes up way more. So obviously just building more practice of these specific things. And you said with reading, it's a bit different. Like you're not just going to do, we're just going to learn inference all the time. Like it doesn't really work like that. Could you just explain that a little bit more? Because as much as you did kind of give a reason, I know definitely my previous self would still be thinking, okay, so I know inference and retrieval comes up more. So what do I do then? Because clearly I need to give some more weighting to that. Is there a way to do that? Or is it just a case of, you just need more text? Like, what were you getting at there?
Well, it's really hard this late in year 6, isn't it? Because you were kind of told really good reading pedagogy is exposed to a wide range of texts and constantly read for pleasure. But at this point in year 6, it's like, okay, well, they've done that for 7 years and they're still not at this point. So what can I do? I think previously exposing them to sentence stems, so the kind of SAT sentence stems that will come up in inference and retrieval questions, like find and copy a word that means, find and copy a phrase that means, and kind of getting them used to the test technique of that. As much as we hate to do that, obviously that is still important. But this kind of last minute, what do we do for revision? LBQ actually have got some really good things. I think Kate's going to show later, but that they've developed this year, some reading diagnostics, which is a great way of practicing the strategies across different genres. So this is alongside your normal reading provision, but it's a great way to actually focus reading revision for SATs, because previously it's a bit like, let's just chuck some more reading papers at them and just practice. But this is kind of a really focused way of developing the different strategies across different genres, aimed at kind of different levels, so every child can have an opportunity to practice for SATs. So we'll have a look at that later. But prior to that, I wouldn't actually have known anything that works really, really well for reading. It is a lot of, let's practice a 3-mark question from a random educational resource online and let's see how they do, sort of thing. Or let's use P, or let's use APE, and all of this stuff. So it's a bit harder, but I'd love for you to see what Kate's got later, because I think it's really, really great in prep for SAT.
No, that was really helpful. Thank you. That just clarified it a bit more in my head.
There might be some people listening who have no idea what P and APE are and are thinking, what on earth are you talking about? But
Well, I'm pleased for them, because it's not something we want to go into. Okay, then, so lastly, the last kind of little bit in reading that's worth looking at is the word counts. It's just quite interesting. They kind of typically hover around 3,000 words. The pass mark has done some wild things recently. So I'm sure, again, anyone that's been in year 6 for a while remembers 2022 when it went up to 58%. And we were like, oh my gosh, can it go any higher? Because I think, out of the maths and grammar as well, it's the highest pass mark that we've seen, nearing 60%. And then it dropped massively the following year. So it seems to be on the increase again. This year it's 56%. Who knows what could happen? I mean, whatever narrative they want to play out, it might go up again to 58%, might hover at 56%, but again, kind of over half the paper. So tend to say, if you want to do well on a reading paper, if you want to pass it, you need to be doing well on those first 2 extracts. Focus on those, and then your really confident readers can have a really good whack. Well, they can all have a whack at the last one, but it's just good to know that those first 2, if they do those really securely, they should be able to get expected standard. So if we kind of do a quick summary of all of those things to focus on. So in maths, your 4 operations and your FTP, important to keep coming back to those as much as possible, as frequently as possible, and in as much depth as possible. In grammar, punctuation and grammatical terms and word classes. And then in reading, continuing to expose them to a wide range of texts, SAT style kind of sentence starters, and looking at the different strategies that you can use across genres, which Kate's going to show us a really good example of later. So yeah, that's all my number crunching for now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sophie. I know a lot of people come for your analysis because it is always superb and the advice you give is fantastic as well. And it is genuinely just very helpful to look at the past and learn from the past, which is exactly what we've just done with Sophie, and we should always continue to do that. So what we're going to do now, we're going to move on to our next tip, which is very much focusing on where children are right now, and we can draw those comparisons as well. So yeah, where are we right now? So a bit of context, LBQ obviously is a very popular platform. It has had upwards of 26,000 children using and completing their diagnostics this year. So that's what we're going to be using. And I say we very loosely, very much over to Daryl and Kate in a minute who've put all of this together. So the data is very, very current, which is really reassuring when we look through this. So Daryl, I'm going to hand over to you in a moment. Can you talk us through what is going on in Year 6 maths at the moment? And let's start with the good news. Where are we looking strong? And then maybe after that, you can talk us through some of the more obvious points for focus as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Hayden. So, yeah, we've had a good dig through all the responses. We always find out so many fascinating insights from doing so, and we try to share those as much as we can as well. So, this is just looking at the data from this cohort from September. As you said, over 26,000 pupils have completed the first maths one. It's giving us quite an accurate picture of where the current Year 6 cohort are doing well, along with where they're likely to be struggling a bit with at the moment. So let's have a quick look at those content domains where the pupils have done the best. It is often all too easy to exclusively focus on the gaps as a Year 6 teacher. It is nice to just spend a little time looking at some strengths as well. So there are some key domains here that feed into lots of other important content domains. As you can see from the asterisks next to each of them, it does reveal that all 5 of these domains were also in the top 5 at approximately the same point last year. So there are some definite patterns emerging over time. It wasn't exactly the same order or the same percentages, but it was very, very similar to similar story to that. There is a small improvement in the average scores from our Springboard Diagnostic 1 to the 3rd diagnostic. So even though each one gets a little bit harder, so that's good to see that things aren't declining, so they're maintaining the standard. There is only one challenging multi-step problem on each of the diagnostics. So these scores really show us that a typical Year 6 pupil will have between 6 and 9 gaps in their understanding on each diagnostic assessment where there's 20 questions. The vast majority of those, as we'll look at shortly, are from the Year 3 to 5 content domains. So let's look a little bit more closely at where the common gaps are.
With
many
Daryl,
year 6, yeah.
This is where I've got to come in. I've got to ask this question because this is the kind of thing that when I first looked through this, I thought to myself, can I guess what these are going to be before you even reveal them? So I want to know right now in the chat. I want to know Year 6 teachers right now thinking, what would be the biggest gaps or most common things my children are getting wrong in the class? I want you to try and fill the chat up right now and see how many of these you can get out of the top 5, because I bet you can hit quite a few of them just from teaching Year 6.
As Daryl reveals them.
Yeah, I want to see the chat filled up because I thought to myself straight away, I don't know about you, Hayden and Sophie, having taught Year 6, I think, oh my goodness me, this is the thing that my class, it feels like I've done it 74,000 times in a row, 64 million days in a row, every single lesson that's possibly existed, and they still can't read an analog clock. Like, that's the kind of thing I'm always thinking. So I want to know right now, what is it?
The very first thing in the chat was time. So there we go. And I also like the passion of it. The amount of exclamation marks in these messages here, guys, in the chat really shows the feeling that you have when you're saying these things.
Oh, Daryl's got the power now, though. He can show us at any point.
Back to you, Daryl. Go on, take it away. We can see how many of these.
Daryl, can I clarify before you start? So because this is autumn term, there won't be much Year 6 content, right? So people are saying long division, but long division won't appear yet because, yeah. So I'm sure long division would probably come up, but it's just Year 3, mostly Year 3 to 5 stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Most of it is all very early Year 6 content. So yeah, sorry, spoiler alert there. Long division isn't going to come up just yet, but I'm sure it will later in the year if we repeat this. So let's have a look then. So we've got our top 5 here, some surprising ones. Certainly for me, the first time I did this, although again, the asterisks is showing that there are some clear patterns. All 5 of the most problematic domains were the same as during autumn term last year, Although, again, some changes to the order, some changes to the percentages. Percentages are slightly lower this year than they were last year, but I'd attribute this more to people using our springboards earlier this year so that they can get on top of those gaps. Properties of 3D shapes has been the top issue this term. It's been consistently every single year. And then also the simple fraction number line question from year 3 continues to cause issues for many year 6 pupils. In 4th place, the fundamental knowledge there that the decimal equivalent of 3/4 is 0.75 is also not fully secure for far too many pupils. And if pupils aren't really fluent with that, there's a lot more problems down the line, I would say.
Yeah,
Long multiplication has remained in the top 5 this year. I did see that coming up quite a lot on the chat there. It is introduced in year 5, and it does pop up again in the early diagnostics. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep chopping away at. In particular, there's quite a few fractions domains. There's quite a few calculations domains. As Sophie explained, fractions is one of the most heavily tested content domains. And not having such basic understanding of even those year 3 objectives, it really shows that there's probably going to be even more problems once you start assessing year 4, year 5, and year 6 fractions objectives as well. So get on top of that as soon as you possibly can, so that your teaching later in the year is as smooth as possible. So these classes and pupils all had mastery sets suggested for them, which take them back to basics. They build up through pictorial representations and scaffolding. And if you've never seen LBQ's mastery sets before, we will have a quick look at those in our short demonstration at the end. So back over to you, Dylan and Hayden.
Yeah, what I wanted to talk about in this one, someone said it in the chat as well, with shape, it really blows my mind every year how it's so consistently lower and children can't quite do it. And I think there is a distinct difference, isn't there, between a process of maybe arithmetic, adding, subtracting, long multiplication, whatever it might be, where you learn a process of doing something and you can kind of tackle that. With shape, I've always found it quite tricky because, yeah, when we say describing 3D shapes, we're saying things like how many vertices are there? How many faces are there? And it's a lot of special reading, isn't it? It's like imagining what that's like as a 3D shape. It's quite a different skill when it comes to actually describing it. So I don't know. I'm hoping my internet isn't cutting out too much, but I just want to throw it over to Hayden and Sophie. What did you do in this situation as year 6 teachers?
I remember going down to the Key Stage 1 classroom and actually getting the box of 3D shapes out that, of course, I didn't have really available in my classroom. And then we just did what I saw them doing in Key Stage 1, and we just got them out on the tables and played with them and felt them, touched them, and kind of they hadn't done that in so long in year 6. They found it really exciting, actually. But just really going back to basics with that and just kind of reminding them actually what they look like in real life.
Remembering that they are just little kids, and even the year 6, I know they're big in school, but like those things are still useful for them and enjoyable. And even things like the decimal equivalent of 3/4, that one always piques my interest because I think it's such a straightforward, simple fact, and I always have struggled by the time they're in year 6, I just assume they can all do it. And actually, there's something to be said for just reminding yourself that actually these simple facts, they might not have picked them up. Having them around your classroom, or spending a bit more time than you think maybe you need to do in that first time you're going through fractions and you're just recapping quickly, is actually quite beneficial, and we shouldn't take it for granted sort of what they've picked up and what they remembered from previous years. There's a lot to remember. The maths curriculum is packed,
I think one thing I will add is, a lot of people are saying this in the chat, and this was my gut instinct with shape, it's kind of rushed through. How often do you get to the end of the year and you think, oh, we've got the end of year performance, we've dropped a maths lesson, or we've got this or that, or my children can't do column method properly, so I'm going to spend a bit longer on that. And it can really get pushed to the side, can't it? And I can see why year 6 children by the year 6 are thinking, I don't know how many vertices are on a cube. It's the kind of thing you hope they might just know by then, but if they've not had the exposure to it and you've not taught it to them enough, as a year 6 teacher, you end up picking that up, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. When I was reading the chat whilst she was talking there, someone said, is it because most of us recap and teach at the end of the year, and it doesn't get the same priority of other topics, which is basically what you're saying. Yeah, it's interesting. And again, it's nice to know that we're all doing the same sorts of things, Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Daryl, for breaking down some of the maths bits. I think we should hand over to Kate now.
Well, Hayden, this is every year 6 teacher's favourite subject in the world, isn't it? GPS. I mean, we absolutely love teaching this, don't we? Come on, Kate.
What an introduction.
Okay.
Hey, can I just say I actually do really like teaching GPS.
Yeah, Dylan.
I
Yeah, Dylan.
genuinely enjoy it. So
No,
I'm
no, no. Listen, there's rules. There's things we can get through. It's nice. It's lovely. Let's come on, Kate. Let's be positive.
There's actually been a vote to kick you out of the call, Dylan. I'm really sorry. But yeah, sorry, Kate. Over to you. Go on. Talk us through the strengths and points of focus here at GPS.
We're gonna start with the positives. Thanks for that, Sophie. And somebody in the chat who said I love teaching GPS. So we've got over 20,000 pupils now having completed the first 3 GPS Springboards, and there is some good foundational knowledge shown here in the top 5. Domain G7, which is taught in Year 4, Standard English, or you begin to teach it in Year 4, it contrarily appears on both the strongest and most problematic content domain lists. And that's because the Standard English question in GPS is a fairly easy one. Pupils having to select the word to make the sentence, "Them apples taste delicious." And luckily, 85% of our pupils correctly selected those. What a relief. So before we take a look at the more challenging questions for GPS, does anyone want to have a guess of what might be at the top of that chart?
Well, I'm not allowed to talk about GPS anymore. I've been put in a corner, so you guys could take her.
I can see apostrophes, active and passive.
Active, passive, yeah. Tense in general.
Okay.
A lot of apostrophes.
So, next slide, please, Daryl. It'll be no huge surprise to anybody
Hey.
that plural possessive apostrophes continue to bemuse our poor little Year 6 pupils, and to be fair, most adults across the country. The first apostrophe question on this list is a standard plural apostrophe after the S for a plural word ending in S, which is girls. So we can see that 78% of pupils struggle to get that one right the first time. And the second one on the list, which was the possessive for an irregular plural noun, men, did seem a fraction easier for pupils, but we've still got a huge number, 56% of our Year 6s found that question a challenge. I'm going to throw it open to you all. How can teachers help with these enduring apostrophe misconceptions? Anybody got any good ideas here?
It's mad, isn't it? Because firstly, I just want to say, teachers are obsessed with apostrophes. You'd think this is the one thing that would be nailed, because we're obsessed. If we're out in the wild and we see something wrong, teachers are the first people to be bringing it up. There's Facebook groups full of people who literally just, I think Sophie, you might have told me this, just posting pictures of things they've seen in real life where the apostrophes are wrong. But yes, onto the serious points. Sophie, I'm going to hand over to you first. Any tips or anything you have in mind when it comes to any of these mistakes with
the
apostrophes?
thing that I do actually, I think when Dylan explained it really well last time, so I'm going to ask Dylan to explain it because I thought he's much more entertaining than me. But yeah.
Listen, I famously love teaching GPS, so I want to really show everyone how I teach apostrophe. No, but genuinely, with apostrophes, I found that the children were constantly getting it wrong when it was plural, like we said there. And I think low-level practice all the time is key. I think that's really important for those misconceptions that they're constantly getting wrong. I think you should revisit it a lot. But my actual teaching tip, I used to box it up. I used the box it up method. And what I meant when I talked about boxing it up is we would think about the noun first and then worry about the possession afterwards. And what that did was it let the children think one thing at a time. Is it a plural noun or is it a singular noun? On the screen there, you can see girls. Okay, girls, I'm thinking of something that belongs to more than one girl. The plural noun is girls. I box it off. That's almost the first part of the question. I don't think about anything else. I'm just getting the children to decide, is it plural or not? And then I go, okay, now they own something. There's possession involved, so we need an apostrophe. And we can talk about whether we want the S or not, because it already ends in an S, and there's lots of debate that I've heard from many teachers saying we need the S, we don't need the S, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, what matters is they put the apostrophe in the right place, which is after that S. And it doesn't surprise me that there is a 20% gap between girls apostrophe and men apostrophe S, because it's when the plural noun ends in an S is when I found a lot of the children struggled with that. And I will say to you right now, as Year 6 teachers, this is something that I taught a lot in Year 4. This is something that the children get frequently, and this is something they still struggle with. So if you're a Year 6 teacher thinking, why don't they just get it? It's because it's really hard to get. It's not an easy thing to do. But I found just boxing it up and then thinking about the possession after, just splitting that up, that cognitive load, I found that very useful. Hopefully, Sophie, that explains my method nicely.
Yeah, that was adequate.
Thank you.
We'll let him back in. He's allowed back into this call now. He's done GPS and wonders. And I will just say, just jumping on the chat as well, please do keep writing your. We might not reference every single thing, but I know other people will be reading it and seeing your lovely methods. I know someone just mentioned a phrase a day, just having one sentence displayed as they come in, just to have that reinforced learning over time, dripping it in. They're really good tips, and we'd love to hear more tips from you guys as we carry on.
Someone just said very quickly, don't get me started on Thomas apostrophe or Thomas apostrophe S. I want to get you all started on it right now. Vote in the chat. Should we put an S after the S at the end of a plural?
Isn't there a rule
Tell
about
me.
if it's one syllable? Kate will know.
I've
If it's
heard
one
this.
syllable name or something.
We had this conversation on our team this week.
Oh.
And yeah, it's really tricky. You've just got to find a style guide and stick to it,
Isn't it
Make
that?
a case for it.
Isn't it about basically being consistent? Isn't that the only rule, basically?
It's choose one method and then stick with that. That's what we came up with.
My name was great for that.
Aesthetically, the S apostrophe S just looks gross, so I like a good apostrophe on its own personally. But
I think that's what we came. I think Talitha, is that right? I think that's what the decision we came to. Yeah, we're still struggling with apostrophes, even the grown-ups. So yeah, it is something we need to get right. I mean, it's a year 4 perspective, isn't it, Dylan?
Yeah. This is it.
You begin teaching it in year 4, and they get really excited, and they chuck the apostrophes around willy-nilly. Everything that ends in S deserves one. But yeah, we do need to nail it.
Louise said sorry for opening a can of worms in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
We managed to contain the worms again. But yeah, thank you, Kate, and thank you, Daryl, as well, for going through those really interesting bits of insight. Just back to you, Sophie, real quick before we go to the next tip. Obviously, with your mind in all the historical data and things you just looked at, would you say this real-time picture kind of matches historical data? Is there anything teachers should expect again?
yeah, I mean, I think, like we said, punctuation comes up a lot. So for having punctuation appear a lot there. So yeah, plural apostrophes and punctuation, then adverbs coming up in word classes, and they both have the heaviest weighting and being the most problematic topics. So obviously, again, that links to the fact that there is so much to cover. There's loads to cover in punctuation and word classes. There's going to be something in there that's the weakest, but it's quite useful to know that across other children of the same age, they are weak. So then you can use that to your advantage now. And the same with maths. So FTP being one of the biggest represented topics, and fractions, decimals, and percentages also coming up as one of the most problematic, which is of course of no surprise to anyone, because FTP is huge and fractions are like very famously really tricky for children, especially if they're kind of not taught really well right from the beginning. So yeah, it's definitely a team effort, because most of these topics come up right from low down in the school. So yeah, it's a lot of correlation here.
So but essentially, Hayden used to get the children in year 6 and then blame me when they couldn't do it. It was great. Fantastic. So what I wanted to do then, let's finish off that tip there. We're going to move on to the next one. So you think about tip 1, we looked at trends from the past, what we could kind of extrapolate for the future. Just now we had a huge set of data from Learning by Questions, where we can basically get a really good view about the national cohort right now in year 6, what they're doing. So the next thing I want to do, tip 3, is talk about tackling those tricky misconceptions. Now, I personally think this is one of the key parts of teaching, and teaching well, is to be able to identify misconceptions, understand why the children were getting something wrong, and then fill that gap and help them to improve. I think this is vital. So it's really important as year 6 teachers, especially this year, like we've already talked about, most of the actual test when it comes to the SATs is from previous year groups. We have to be able to identify these misconceptions and just face them basically head on. So Daryl, I'm going to come back over to you, the man with the power, the man with the PowerPoint. What would you say so far this year, thinking about maths, what have been the trickiest questions that have popped up and you thought, okay, actually, this is a misconception here?
Thanks. Yeah. So as well as our diagnostics, we also help pupils become familiar with SAT-style questions, but with the safety net of immediate feedback and retries for the pupil as well. So that can make a huge difference in building resilience in pupils who might answer but not know whether it was right or wrong until a few days later. So we've looked at the data for those as well, again, from year 6 pupils across the country during the past year, so it's up to date. We've ignored the most challenging, greater depth problems because many pupils struggle with those naturally. I've picked out 3 of the what I think are more straightforward word problems that are proving to be challenging for pupils on our SAT-style papers. So firstly, we have a relatively simple money problem where one person has a given amount more than the other person. So even though the numbers and the calculations themselves are fairly easy, The concept of unequally distributing an amount of money often causes a lot of issues. So most people who answered incorrectly on here went for 86 pence, where basically they've just seen the digits, they've subtracted it, and they've not done anything further. Next, we've got arranging digit costs to create the smallest possible even number. And the top misconception there was for pupils to make the smallest number, but not to make it even, either because they aren't sure about even numbers in 6-digit numbers, or maybe because they didn't see or didn't read that part of the question, perhaps more likely. And finally, I've picked out this 2-step problem as standing out, with only 51% of Year 6 pupils getting the answer correct the first time. So although it's not causing quite so many issues as the other 2 questions, it is a really standard SATs question from paper 2 or paper 3. And really, you'd want it to be bread and butter for the pupils to be picking up 2 marks on that one. So the fact that almost half of Year 6 pupils are dropping marks on it is a little bit of a concern. The top misconception of £44.27 arises from pupils only subtracting the information that's given in digits, and crucially, they've missed out reading the word 7. So it's similar to the first question in a way, and it highlights that many pupils are focused heavily on the digits without fully reading or perhaps fully understanding the whole question. So that's definitely a problem to pay attention to, Dylan and Hayden, because this is real, genuine, real world maths. It's so important for every single pupil to be able to do calculations like that, I think.
I was going to say, like, if my first glance, those questions when you were talking, I was like, it's interesting, both money questions, but really the money is almost a secondary thing there. It's actually just the fact that they're 2-step problems and they've not been read properly. And I find it particularly interesting as well that in both examples, they've just subtracted the smaller number from the larger number. But rather than, trying to solve a problem, like someone in the chat said, draw a bar model, which is a method you might use. But yeah, particularly interesting that they've done the same thing with both, and it's clearly just about reading the question.
Yeah, the one thing I'd add to that is when you actually break down what the maths is, it's not that hard, is it? We've said this before, that what they've got to do, for example, in the third question, 7 times £5.73, and then take it away from £50. It's not tricky maths. Like we said so much before, previous Year 6 level stuff, that's what they need to actually answer this question, but unlocking it is tricky. The one thing I found really interesting, question 1 and question 2, very similar amount of children got it right first time. I'd argue the second question is much easier in terms of, we're talking about even numbers, making a small number that's even. That's very, very simple stuff on its own, but it just goes to show, doesn't it, that when shown in this test style way, in a word problem, with children reading it independently, how much of a barrier that can be into actually solving the problem. So I think that's really interesting. Sophie?
Well, just on the back of what you were saying, I think what's nice to do sometimes is just give, for example, 1 and 3, this is a bit easier to do with than the middle one, is to just give them the arithmetic. So remove all the words and just write it out as an arithmetic question and get them to solve it, and then show them the word problem and say, this is exactly the same question. Like, you could do that so much easier, and then just get them to discuss why it's harder and the importance of actually reading the language, because the maths is not hard. But like for most of the children, it's like you said, it's the language that holds them back. So it just shows how important it is to read things really carefully.
I think that's a really nice tip. Definitely something to do in the classroom. Yeah, fantastic. I'd like to know actually from you guys, just in the chat as well, like which of these questions would you be dreading the most? Which one do you think your children wouldn't be getting right most
I think
often?
maybe I'm going to go for number 2, by the way, whilst we're on this chat. I actually really do think that, despite I think being maybe the easiest actual question,
Yeah,
I think I think I had to get most of my class getting 2 wrong because they'd rush. They'd think it was easy, and
that's it, isn't it?
but a
The
number.
rushing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking the exact same thing. My Year 6 classes over the years, you just think, I just know the typical culprits that will just rush that. Like, this is too easy for me. Even numbers or smallest numbers, well easier. I spend 5 seconds not really thinking at a surface level and get it wrong. But yeah, they're all good questions. I think the first one's a bit tricky with the way, like Daryl said, with the wording.
Yeah.
Like someone said, you may be using bar models to really try and visualize that question. It's a bit harder. And the third one, as I said, is a bit more straightforward. It's just like you said, people not reading the word 7. It's like there's not a number there, so they've just kind of ignored it.
I think they would these days, Hayden. I think they're beyond the number 7. They sniffed it out like anything, along with another one.
Let's hope that wasn't question 6. Messed up, but yeah, no, good to see that people agree.
that middle question though is the kind of one that, you know, like you get the paper back from kids that have got 99 and you're trawling through the paper like, what's the one thing?
Yeah.
And it's this, and they've actually got it wrong, and you know that they can do it, and you're just like, that's
Yeah.
I can just see that.
Yeah, you can ask them separately, can you make the smallest number good? What's an even number? And they give you perfect definition. You think, why have you not done
The
this?
pressure of the test, they're just like,
Yeah.
it just
Someone's made a really good point in the chat about EAL learners as well. Like, what a barrier for our EAL learners who might be the most fantastically gifted mathematicians, who also in their own first language would probably maybe even get these questions right. But as soon as it's, you know, in this kind of, you know, it's going to hold them back. And yeah, 30.4% for the middle one, being fewer children correct first time than the first question. I think that sums up what we're saying, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's just hard to access this test.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Daryl, for that maths analysis. I think we'll move over to Kate now. We're going to keep Dylan muted, obviously, Kate. I'm sorry about how he was acting earlier about GPS and his hatred for it, but we're going to go over to you now. Let's have a look at the biggest misconceptions in GPS.
Thanks, Hayden. The most difficult question across all three of our practice GPS SATs papers is the same one as last year, and it's the delightful present progressive form.
I love the present progressive form. I don't know why anyone thinks otherwise. This is my favorite thing in the world.
We've had a little bit of progress since last year. Last year, only 18% of pupils could answer correctly first time. And so we've had a giant 2% gain here, because 20% of pupils responded to this question correctly with the phrase am building. A further 17% did manage the progressive. They managed the building part of the verb phrase, but they didn't read their answer then to realise it wouldn't make sense without an auxiliary am. And 5% of the pupils answered was building. So they were really close, but they were either not secure with the tenses or they just didn't read the question carefully. The second most difficult question was the extremely useful change the sentence from passive to active. I mean, such a vital skill. But many pupils missed the mark because they didn't put a full stop. And it does say in the instructions, remember to punctuate your answer correctly. And the SATs mark scheme says they can't have it if they don't put a full stop. So despite some, you know, pupils, 25% of them, quarter of your pupils did get it right, but missed out the mark because of basic punctuation error. It's really frustrating. Hopefully this is an easily addressed error. What do you think about that one, Dylan?
Wow, as the self-proclaimed person and advocate for the GPS paper, I think my words hold very much weight here. I'll be really honest with you. I've heard a lot of people say about the active and passive voice, it's a mark, just leave it, it's pointless, don't worry about it too much. I've heard that said before, and I'm always reluctant when I look back to maths and we say, oh, we shouldn't obviously let something drop off the curriculum, it's really important we cover everything, and I completely agree. But I can't help but think with things like this, it's just so, it feels arbitrary sometimes. But at the end of the day, if it's a gap, we need to try and fill it. I understand that. So I actually wanted to bring in Sophie and Hayden, because you guys have done this, you know, to death at year 6 constantly. And Hayden, I remember you said something about tenses, and you just made it a thing in your classroom where you built up.
Yeah, it's nothing crazy, but like it's inherently quite boring, isn't it? Learning about progressive, simple, perfect versions of the tense. Like it's possibly the most boring thing you could do. So I just made a running joke out of it with my classes over the years. I just found that if I built it up over the year rather than just doing like one explicit lesson on it and hoping they've learned it, like as if they're going to learn this horribly boring thing that they can't really use in any way. You know, it's very much just you're just learning a fact for a fact's sake. I just found with that sort of stuff, similar to the active and passive voice in a way, I would just build it up over the year and we'd have a running joke of coming back to it and think, oh, we've got to go back to this again, the old progressive tense, guys. What was it again? Remind me. You know, we just do that. And I found that they're more likely to remember it over time if they were kind of in on the joke with me as well. But you know, a small tip. Sophie, what do you think with these questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's like Alexander just said, it's mad because if they show actual understanding of the grammatical concept and then just don't put a full stop, which is most likely, I mean, if they can do active to passive, they probably know how to use a full stop. So, and Dylan, I actually disagree with you. I really like active to passive because I think it's really formulaic how to do it. I usually would always just never teach the subjunctive. The subjunctive has only ever had 1 mark on a grammar paper, if ever appearing at all. And I think it's the most pointless, useless thing ever. I don't know if Kate agrees.
I think this probably shows
wholeheartedly.
This this probably shows my love for GPS that I've got those two mixed up myself. So, you know, even so, like, but you know, you're right. It's formulaic. I think a lot of GPS is formulaic. I think actually as a teacher, jokes aside now, when I've taught GPS before, I actually quite like the structured sense of this is the rule, we do this and we identify that. I like that. For me, it's just, you know, when we're talking about put it into writing and actually using it, there can be kind of a disconnect at times. So, you know, in these GPS sessions where we find these gaps, it is important that you, Hayden, you know, Kate as well, these people who've actually taught this, if we can share this advice with people in the chat right now, it's actually really useful.
Amazing. Right. That is GPS wrapped up, I think, and that's maths as well. So we're not going to be taking a look at reading in this section, but LBQ does have a brand new reading diagnostic. I think it might have been introduced this year, guys. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's fresh hot off the press.
Amazing. So, and that's going to be looked at the end of this. So it's all aligned to their SATs Springboard. Yeah, just stay till the end to see that in action as well. So let's wrap up this part and move on. So we've prioritized. We know where people sit nationally. We've now talked about and tackled some of those misconceptions that always show up. And hopefully you feel good knowing you're not alone at this point. I think the chat has been really clear that we're all kind of in the same place. So I'm going to cue you in, Dylan, for tip number 4.
Yeah, firstly, I'll say people need to jump off for whatever reason. The slides and the video will be sent to you, but we'll try and get through this next few bit now. It was top loaded, this chat, I've got to say, all the stats and the information right at the start. Let's get through these last few tips here, still just as important. Tip 4, we're talking about familiarization without fear. That's our tagline here, because at the end of the day, we simply have to familiarize children with the SATs paper, whether we like teaching to a test or not. We've got to teach children things and they've got to sit a test at the end of year 6. So first things first, in the chat, I want to know, bringing the levels down again, guys, I'm so sorry. What is the silliest thing, the most bizarre answer you've seen in a test paper? Because we've all sat there before, 54 tests deep in our marking. Someone's got a question and it's just hilarious. And we can't help but laugh because they've done something silly. They've read the question wrong. They've done something bizarre. I had one where I remember I saw this online. It was a maths paper with a classic thought bubble question. And it was someone saying, this is a triangle. And then someone said underneath the bubble, they ignored the bubble and they said, no, it's not a triangle because it's a bubble. And they thought that was part of the question. So that was classic getting the question wrong. Maybe hadn't really been exposed to this idea of the thought bubbles there to explain your reasoning and got it wrong. So loads now in the chat. Hayden, I want you to read through them. But I want to talk about those avoidable SATs mistakes, okay? Hey, Sophie mentioned earlier, I think at every point, whether you're doing formal testing or not, we should be exposing children to SAT STEM questions, find and copy a word, tick one box, those things that are really nothing to do with actually understanding and learning the curriculum, but are just potentially a barrier to showing off what you can do when it comes to the test. I think there's a few examples we're going to put on the screen now. Hayden, I want you to take over and talk about them, and maybe as well mention a few. Obviously, you've been laughing in the background.
Yeah, I will then. I'm chuckling away, not listening to you, looking at the comments, laughing. But yeah, if we go to the next slide, we'll show you a couple of funny ones. They're the classics, you know, we all cringe at these. Tick 1, they've ticked 2. This is why familiarization is important. It's obviously just getting them used to this and making jokes out of it. Circle 2 words, and they've circled 2 words, the classic. And this one on the right is actually a recent addition to these slides because we were talking about this the other day. And this is actually from my girlfriend, who's also a teacher, from a few years ago. She had a child in her class. The question was draw a pentagon, and they drew a peacock, which I think deserves 4 marks on the paper, and I hope that child did. I don't think they actually did. But yeah, we had a couple of funny ones in the chat as well. Someone said, this is very sassy, by the way. This page is being purposely left blank, and the child wrote next to it or underneath it, well, clearly it isn't blank. You've written this, mate. So, there's been lots of funny ones. The cat speaking Spanish. If you've been around long enough, you know exactly what that's referring to in an SATs paper.
That cat, honestly.
And all sorts. So
Can I just show one more from the chat really quick? It said, show you're working out, and they said their child drew around their hand because they'd use their fingers to work it out. That was brilliant. Love that.
Oh, amazing.
Oh,
amazing.
God, that is so good. I've got something, just while we're on this, familiarization. But people said earlier when they start the test. Hayden, what are your thoughts on when to start the test? Because I had some people say, I wouldn't do this if I could choose. I'd do it later. Just with people weren't in there for that chat, very briefly, do you have an opinion? Haven't been in year 6 for a long time. When's the right time to do formal testing? Should you always do something?
I mean, you kind of summarized it. It was right at the beginning of the chat, so a lot of people weren't in. Someone said, "Should I have been doing it by now?" And other people were saying they're already doing it. But I think formal testing, there genuinely is no right answer. For me personally, I wouldn't start. Never did it in like the first week of year 6, unless I was doing something like what Sophie said, which I think was a really good tip, which is taking out the year 6 content, because I didn't want to overload them, like you were just saying a minute ago, Dylan. But most of the time, I'd start taking it a bit more seriously around now. In all honesty, this is when I'd start be thinking, right, I've taught a lot of the year 6 curriculum now. Those old SATs papers, sitting them in a more formal way is a bit more appropriate. But like I said, like you said, there really isn't a perfect time to actually do that. Sophie, I feel like you've written blogs and all sorts of things about this, haven't you? About when to be introducing SATs papers. If you could talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's one on LBQ, so I won't go into loads of much detail, but in terms of how difficult each SATs paper is, based on the pass mark and based on general consensus from year 6 teachers, I kind of put together an idea of when you might use which SATs papers and which are best to use closer to the actual SATs. So yeah, that's on LBQ's blog, but obviously it's totally up to every teacher. Some people might have done like 3 of them already, and some might not have started yet. So there's so many different approaches to it. It's what's right for your school / what you're told to do. So
that is true. A lot of the time, that is it, isn't it? So yeah, familiarization is super important. Thank you, Dylan and Sophie and everyone, for your awesome tips as well. We are now going to move on to tip 5. And as Dylan said, very top loaded, as you can see. We spent a long time looking for data and thinking about things, and we're already on tip 5. So tip 5 is about looking after yourself. And this phrase I'm about to say, I know it sounds a bit corny, but you are the most important resource in the room. People say that, and often we roll our eyes. I know, but no one likes to hear it because we're teachers. We have to pretend that that's not true, but it really is true. You're the most important resource in the classroom. And we talk about it a lot on our podcast. Dylan probably will waffle on forever if we go onto it, but we spend a lot of our podcast just talking to teachers like you about the importance of looking after yourself. And one of the things we do say is just remembering that this is a Key Stage 2 test. It's not a year 6 test. I think we've made that really, really clear throughout this whole webinar, is that there's a lot of content from year 3, 4, and 5. I'm not saying that everything's going to be mastered by that point. You can put your feet up in year 6 because you know that they've smashed all the year 3, 4, and 5 content, so you don't have to do anything. But it is important to remember that. I mean, funny enough, me and Dylan were talking to a teacher yesterday, and we were comparing an end of year 5 test with a Key Stage 2 SATs test. And we were saying how interesting it is that some of the children were finding the end of year 5 test harder because it was all year 5 content compared to the Key Stage 2 SATs paper, which is actually a mixture of year 3, year 4, and year 5, as well as year 6 as well. So just bearing that in mind. And you can't do everything. You shouldn't try to do everything. That's why we started with tip 1, which is about prioritizing. I mean, I personally, and Sophie, feel free to jump in on this, and Daryl and Kate, with your experience in the past as well, Dylan maybe. But I've had years where I felt burned out, like completely burned out, completely on the edge of burnout. Luckily, I worked in a really lovely school for the last few years, and I didn't feel that as much. But I've certainly worked in other places where that burnout got me. And when it happens, you're just not the teacher your class needs. So it all circles around to, looking after yourself is super important. And I think we should just maybe go for a few things. Dylan, you can jump in if you want as well. And sorry, Sophie, Daryl, and Kate, I brought you in to say, if you have anything to add, then immediately moved on. So I apologize.
No, Hayden, it's really important because I'm sure people, you've spent a lot of time talking, and the first thing for your well-being, I'm sure a lot of people have got a big marking pile over there to do. It's 5 o'clock now after a long day, so let's crack on. I think what I would say to people is, a big thing for me is LBQ itself. I used to use it as a teacher. Okay, I used to use LBQ myself, learning by questions. And what it allowed me to do is keep all the best parts of teaching, keep what I'm good at, keep what I can do in terms of helping the kids and teaching them. But it found the gaps for me. It gave the children quality questions. It just took that burden away from me. And I know every single teacher who uses learning by questions says the same thing. It reduced their workload, and it had no detrimental effect on the children whatsoever, because that's always the battle, isn't it, in our heads as teachers? What can I do less of, but still give the kids the absolute best version of their education? And LBQ does that. It was a big thing for me. I could just say, right, kids, off you go. We're on this small step right now. Have a go at it. I can see who can do what. I can go to do small group teaching right there and then. It wasn't replacing me, but it was giving me all the information I needed to have that impact on the kids without me having to sit. People said at the start of this chat, I'm doing QLA right now. I'm doing my gap analysis. I'm typing in yes or no, 1s and 0s, and then I'm going to go back and have a look at everything and take out the trends myself. Guys, there's enough of actual technology out there now, like on Learning by Questions, that can do it for you. And you can see on the screen, it's so nice when you get green questions. But for me personally, my kids always used to say, I've got a gold. And I didn't correct them and say it was yellow. I let them have their gold because to them, it was almost better to get the gold because it meant they got it wrong. And then they went back and fixed it. And they almost wore that as a badge of honor, to the point where I had to stop some of them getting it wrong on purpose in the first time. That's granted. But what it meant was greens and golds were where they wanted to be. And if they were red, I was a teacher, I could go over and I could help them. So that's what I would say. You know, your well-being is so important. There's loads of tips we can go through. But for me, it's things like this that tangibly change the amount of time I'm doing something without, and in fact, enhancing what the children get.
Definitely. Amazing tip. We'll go for a couple of little tips and then we'll move on. So another one from me is just asking for help as well. And that sounds really silly, but like we said at the start, we're really isolated sometimes as year 6 teachers and feel like we have to take it all on ourselves. But going to SLT, presenting the problem, you're the expert, you know your class better than anybody. And if you need something, you just need to make it really quite clear. And one more from me, Dylan, I'll let you finish off with talking about your boundaries, because I know you like talking about boundaries. But well-being strategies that actually work, I think, is so important as well. We are good friends. I know LBQ is good friends with Charlie Burley as well. He's known as the teacher's health coach. He's a former teacher turned well-being coach. He's a speaker, author of Healthy Habits for Teacher Life. I've read the book. It's really, really cool. He's qualified mental health exercise coach, and he's mentored thousands of teachers. So people like him, you know, he's got amazing resources that they're going to be shared along with the recording on this as well. So definitely check it out. He's worked with LBQ in the past. But Dylan, finish up with last tip about boundaries, because I know setting boundaries is very important.
Yeah, last thing I'm going to talk about is, it's not to do with cricket. I do love cricket, but I'm not talking about those boundaries. Unless you, as a teacher, put those boundaries up yourself, no one's going to do it for you. So you can still be a quality teacher, give your children the best version of you. And you can do that by saying, no, look, here's my line. I'm going to do all this stuff extra. It's part of the job. I'm going to plan bits. I'm going to give my all to you when I can and when I'm in front of you. But you decide yourself, where are your boundaries? And that is really key. And that's something that kept me teaching for much longer than otherwise, was when I said, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it really well. It is enough, and I control that. And what my boundaries are might be different to what Hayden's boundaries are, will be different to what Sophie's boundaries were. We all have different levels, but you've got to take control of that yourself. So that's why I'd say to you, as much as you can, control the controllables, and we can go from there. Hayden, was that good enough?
That was good enough. Well done. I think,
you.
Dylan, we're at the end of our tips. I think it's time to summarize and just go over our top tips before we crack on with the demo.
Let's do it. So pinpoint your priorities. The first thing, take a look at the trends. Sophie's amazing analysis, unbelievably clear, concise. And as year 6 teachers, that information is key. We know what to prioritize now. Number 2, looking at where the cohort is right now. We're so lucky to have Learning by Questions with so many data points that we can essentially extrapolate to the nationwide picture. What are the gaps that children are struggling with right now, and what can we do to help them? Tip 3, the next one that we talked about, was all about misconceptions, being really clear as to why are the children getting this wrong? What are the trends we can see? Is it to do with the word problems in maths? Is it to do with the actual ability to teach GPS? Because we all absolutely love it, including me. It's my favorite thing in the world. Whatever it might be, knowing that and having those roadblockers in our sight and on our vision means we can tackle them head on. There's no point ignoring it. Tip 4, we moved on to after, and we talked about, excuse me, I got some throat. This is where I'm trying to go through everything too quickly. I'm starting to lose my, I need a drink. We talked about time to familiarize and basically getting things wrong. We don't want our children seeing draw a pentagon and then they're drawing a peacock on their piece of paper in front of them. That's something we want to try and avoid. But in all seriousness, there's always going to be questions like that. But what we can control, again, find and copy a word, find and copy a phrase. Do your class know the difference between a word and a phrase? I'm pretty sure they will do if you're teaching in year 6, but can we make sure children aren't seeing that for the first time when it comes to the test? We want to get rid of all of that. So all of their cognitive load is on, can I actually solve this question? Can I find the evidence? Can I retrieve? Can I infer? Vital. And then tip 5 is about your well-being, looking after yourself. Again, I'm going to make the joke about you've probably got a part of marking you need to do. Guys, just don't do it. Just go in tomorrow. I'm sure it'll be fine. Crack on. This is more important right now because you're going to have more of an impact. It's about deciding what is going to have the biggest impact for your class. You are the best person to make that call. And if it means that you're watching this call right now and getting this information rather than taking a maths lesson from yesterday, so be it.
Thank you, Dylan, for that very passionate summary at the end there. Guys, thank you so much. We've made it this far. There's still hundreds in the chat. We really appreciate it. And do stick around. I just want to say a massive thank you for LBQ as well for putting these tips together. Daryl, Kate, and Sophie, your advice was awesome and very welcomed across this session. So, quick thing from me, and then I'm going to hand over to Darren and Kate, who are going to show you a bit more about how LBQ can actually help you. And it is genuinely a fantastic, fantastic product. So everything you've seen in this, every data set has all come from SATs Springboard. It's been updated this year, like I said, including the new reading diagnostics. So definitely check those out. One thing I have to say, and I have got the approval from LBQ, it sounds really cheeky, that you can do and take advantage of LBQ this way is to do this. Get yourself booked on for a free trial, because in a free trial, you get access to the entire maths and English library, and you get the first 3 maths and GPS diagnostics, so you can use those tests. They're going to give you detailed pictures of exactly where your class is, as we've seen from some of the data here, and you can set the suggested personalized gap-filling resources for the first 2 diagnostics. All sounds very fancy, but the guys will talk you through it in a minute. So you'll also get a free year 6 reading diagnostic as well that you can use to analyze an action, and just imagine what a head start you can get in January. So if you book a trial sort of ASAP, really try and get it in before that Christmas break, you'll get a 20-minute call with LBQ and they'll just talk you through the platform and how to get started. And obviously January is crazy busy, so I would recommend trying to get in beforehand, because then you can also know that through the Christmas holidays you're going to come back in January and hit the ground running, because you can use this free trial. And I'll emphasize this is a free trial. There's no obligation to carry on from there, but you can use it, get the free diagnostics, you got January sorted. It's genuinely a really good way just to maximize January. So
there's a lot of people in the chat saying thank you, and I have to rush off and leave, guys. I hope you found it useful. I really do appreciate all the messages there, people saying that they've got something out of today. That's all we really want, isn't it? You to have got this far and got something out of it. But we're not done yet, are we, Hayden?
Absolutely not. And someone said, is the free trial available after Christmas? Absolutely. That's how I want you to take advantage of everything I was just saying. So Daryl, Kate, I'm going to hand over to you now, because you are the experts of this. I'm going to hand over to you to talk us through and show us how SATs Springboard actually works.
Thanks, Hayden. Thanks, Dylan. So the SATs Springboard works like this. You'll begin by running a 20-question diagnostic. We've got 12 of them for maths, 12 for GPS, and we've got 7 for reading. Oh, we've got 3 for spelling as well. The platform will analyze the data for you, and it'll make suggestions of question sets for you to fill any gaps. It'll make up to 3 suggestions for the whole class and up to 3 individual suggestions for each pupil based on how they've done. You can review the suggestions, you can add more if you like, and approve the ones you'd like to use. And you might allocate the question sets as a whole class revisit, as a small group revisit, or through independent targeted practice. And once those gaps have been addressed, you can run Diagnostic 2 with a fresh set of questions and recommendations. In the GPS Springboard diagnostics, the topic content domains are in the same proportion to the SATs papers across all 12 of the GPS diagnostics. The year group objectives are more heavily weighted to earlier in the curriculum for the first few, so these are suitable to use early in year 6, but more year 6 content is gradually introduced through the course of the 12 diagnostics. And by GPS Springboard 9, those year group weightings are the same proportion to the SATs papers. For maths, the design of the diagnostics is based on Sophie's analysis of the SATs papers. The maths topics are weighted in similar proportion to the SATs papers, but as you can see from those little graphs underneath, more year 6 content is gradually introduced through the course of the programme, and by Maths Springboard 10, those year group weightings are now in a similar proportion to the SATs papers. A brand new this year, we've launched our reading diagnostics, which are already proving very popular. I think we've had about 10,000 pupils on them already.
Wow.
The reading diagnostics have got associated strategy sets alongside them, and these will support pupils to read more widely, to develop that reading stamina. Those SATs papers, those reading papers are chunky. There's loads of opportunities on them for pupils to reflect on their own answers and compare them with exemplar answers. So after completing all the tasks in the reading diagnostic, pupils will have read 14 new texts of similar length and pitch to the SATs reading papers across 7 genres. They'll have used approximately 140 new words in context, become really, really familiar with answering those SAT-style questions across all those reading content domains, and learned a range of strategies for tackling similar questions in new texts. So we're going to jump to the platform now. When you log in, you'll already have the basis of your Springboard scheme set up. It contains the 12 diagnostics and some additional useful year 6 content at the end, which you can use whenever you think is appropriate. And the idea is here that you'll build your own bespoke revision scheme based on your exact class needs. So once the pupils have gained some familiarity with the basics of the platform, you'll want to run Diagnostic 1. So this is a pupil preview for this set. If they get a question correct the first time, the question number in the bar goes green. If a pupil gets the wrong answer, the bar turns red, and they'll immediately get some feedback based on their answer so they can self-correct it, and it'll turn orange or gold. I really like that.
Yes.
Gold means you've learned something. It's beautiful. As the pupils are working through the questions, the teacher will see a screen like this one building up. And the teacher can see in real time exactly how the class is doing, so they can intervene where required immediately.
Brilliant. Super clear.
Yeah, you can pause the session whenever you like. You can pull the question up on the whiteboard, model some strategies as required, and you can even then send it back to pupils for a quick learning check. Have you understood what we've just talked about? Oh, great. Okay. You might not want to do this whilst you're running a diagnostic, but it is a really powerful in the lesson tool for maintaining focus and keeping your class moving forwards together. We'll have a quick look now at what happens after the diagnostic with our unique Analyze and Action feature here. So as well as that live gap analysis, the platform analyzes your data for you and then makes suggestions of which question sets will help fill those gaps that the class have, as well as suggesting sets for adult-led small group revisits and personalized tasks for each pupil. So you can see here that it's analyzed the data and identified these 3 class areas for improvement. We've got subtraction there and addition and division for the whole class. It's recommended one of our full mastery question sets, so I'll just quickly talk you through that now. Our full mastery sets start with pictorial support or some scaffolding in level 1. When pupils have answered enough questions on that level, they'll go to level 2, which is fluency, where they answer questions that meet the main objective independently. In maths, there's some simple one-step problems as well on this level. For maths sets, level 3 is reasoning and level 4 is problem solving. Every mastery set will contain 5 quality reasoning questions to promote deep thought and expose any misconceptions, and also 5 problem solving questions that they'll make even your fastest workers slow down and really think deeply. In English, they'll progress through to application and deeper engagement with the objective in those later levels. So you can have a look at the questions themselves. You can choose to set a reminder. You can set it for homework. You can add it to your revision scheme to come back to at a later date. You can add more if you like. I mean, here, question 4, identify vertical lines. Many pupils struggled with this one, but it's not an automatic suggestion from the platform because it's not normally worth many marks, but the teacher can choose to address that if they'd like to. Once you've dealt with those class gaps, you can have a look at which groups of children need specific work for an objective, and you can allocate an appropriate question set to a specific member of staff. You can add in pupils to that group, or you could take them out. The teacher remains in control of those decisions all the time. Next, you can click on the Individual Suggestions tab to see the gaps identified for individual pupils. We can see here that James needs to work on those 3 things, and then all the pupils in the class have got their own individual suggestions. If we scroll down to have a look at Isabella, we can see she's done really well on that diagnostic. So she's been set some extension activities there to deepen her understanding and really, really challenge her. You can review and set these questions for pupils to complete independently, whether that's at some point in the week or even at home for homework. There's a convenient set all button once you're happy the platform's made those good suggestions for your pupils. And that's it. With one diagnostic question set, you've got your first lot of skills gaps identified. With another couple of clicks, you've planned appropriate class revisits. You've got some tailored intervention groups, and you've assigned individual work to address those gaps. And you've not had to do any marking or any laborious question level analysis
The winner.
at all.
Oh, Yes, it's music to my ears. Not only is it so good, I do have to do less stuff. Wow.
That's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Kate. It's such an incredible platform, and I can't stress enough again what I said before about getting booked in for a trial. I know that free trials are being booked left, right, and centre already during this call, so I would recommend getting involved as soon as possible so you can get involved before Christmas. But yeah, thank you so much, Kate and Daryl. Daryl, you were behind the scenes there doing a lot of clicking, a lot of moving, and you were keeping up pace with Kate, so that was fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Daryl.
Awesome stuff. Well, and that's it, guys. Thank you for making it to the end. We've got still 100 or so people here. Thank you, Sophie, again as well for being here with us. And again,
hello, you got someone else to have that?
oh yeah, well, there was another guy whose internet was bad. He was in this call as well, Dylan or something. Dylan or something like that from Teach Seek Repeat podcast. Yes.
Is that my full title, is it?
Yeah, that's your name. That's your actual name now. But anyway, from all of us and obviously the team at Learning by Questions as well, thank you so much for attending today. We really do wish you the best of luck with SATs. I hope these tips were useful, and even if it just gave you a sense of realizing you're not alone, you're not isolated, and then we're all going through the same thing. Hopefully, even that's just enough. Have a very lovely Christmas as well, because we are quickly approaching the Christmas holidays. But yeah, the chat has been brilliant tonight. Thank you for joining in as well. Had some hilarious examples. I certainly will be going back through and just reading some of those funny examples from earlier and stealing them for my own benefit. But yes, smash the new year, guys. We're all rooting for you. And don't forget, the slides will all be sent to you. The recording will be sent to you, including Charlie Burley's awesome tips for dealing with exam stress as well. And that is it, guys. Thank you so much. Have I missed anything, Dylan, Sophie, Daryl, Kate?
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you so much. If you've got any final questions, of course, the chat's still open as well. And you can drop them in there. Good stuff. That's it. We can go back to our nonsense chat now, Sophie and Dylan. What are we talking about? Oranges and geographical things.
Nonsense.
Amazing.
Bro.
So, Daryl and Kate, I don't know if you want to, or Sophie, I don't know if you want to jump in and answer some of these questions with us as well, particularly the ones about trials. Obviously, you guys know a bit more, but how long does the trial last, Daryl?
Yeah, generally it's between 2 and 3 weeks, but we're quite flexible in terms of if you're off for a week or something like that, you've got holidays, we can work it around. So generally it's between 2 and 3 weeks.
Amazing.
Makes
a lot of sense. I can't see any more questions, guys. Go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a great Christmas as well.
Go and do that pile of marking.
Have a great Christmas right now and do your pile of marking later. We've lost it. We've talked for an hour, and that's it.
That's it, exactly. I'm out of water. Do you remember I nearly lost my voice giving those tips out earlier, guys? I nearly lost my voice.
You did. I'm surprised.
Thing, Dylan.
Thank you, Sophie. Yeah. It's surprising. I didn't realize Dylan could lose his voice. I've seen him speak for 7 hours straight once. 7 hours
What did you
straight.
do to deserve that?
It was torture, punishment. We were recording a podcast and he forgot that I talk in it as well. So
Good.
it's all love, really. I'm just joking. He's got a poor internet connection, which means I can have the upper hand right now and take the mic.
Well, I'm not even going to try and talk. And if I am, maybe this will come in through 20 seconds when the call is actually finished. I don't know.
Yeah. Amazing. Cool. Well, we haven't got any more questions right now. So LBQ team, it's up to you what we do now. I'm not sure whether we are going to stick around for some more questions or call it there.
Well, we're always here. You can always email us if you've got any questions afterwards. But yeah, from all of us here at LBQ, just like to say thank you very much to everyone that's been involved in the call, and have a great Christmas as well.